Spider-Man Hostile Takeover, Chapter 25. Peter was supposed to meet MJ for coffee that morning, which was good. He needed someone to talk to. He still didn't know what to make of the woman, who seemed so desperately to want to hurt him, to expose him. There was something about his silence that left him unsettled. Somehow, the whole thing felt personal. Yet as far as he could remember, they had never met. When he talked about it with MJ, she also found the whole thing confounding. Maybe she knew someone who died at the sandwich place, he said, keeping his voice quiet so no one could hear him. Now she blames Spider-Man for it. Not likely, MJ shook her head. From what you're telling me, she needs months, maybe years to imitate your moves the way she did. You can't just pick up something like that, even if you're already an athlete. That made sense. How did she know where to find me, he said. Even I didn't know where I was going. She must have followed you, MJ replied. It's the only explanation. That means... She cut herself off. You said you took a picture of her. Peter nodded and reached for his phone. He transferred a photo from his camera built into his suit. The picture was somewhat blurry. MJ looked at it and shook her head. I've never seen anyone who looks like that. Her outfit is kind of generic, like clothes she bought at a store, rather than a suit that a hero or villain would have custom made. I can show it around the newsroom, though. Maybe someone there will recognize it. He nodded. There's got to be a story to her. And that handprint. It must mean something. Hold on, she said. Let me look again. I'm getting a weird feeling. Your MJ sense? He asked. She laughed. Exactly. I don't know. It's kind of a deja vu. She looked at the photo again. There's something familiar about her. I've seen her somewhere, but I can't. Her eyes were wide. Oh my God. That sounds like recognition. She slid the phone back. That's Maya Lopez, Fisk's creepy assistant. I've met her a couple of times. She sat in on my last meeting with him and never said a thing. How many meetings have you had exactly? Peter, stay focused. I have no idea what she does for Fisk, but she's a top player. It's really odd, because she's clearly pretty young. Younger than we are. But he seems to take her seriously. His eyes are on her a lot. You think she's his special lady on the side? MJ squinted as she thought about it. I never got a sense that there was anything romantic or sexual in Fisk's interaction with this woman, and he's famously devoted to his wife. She's out of the country now, but I don't think it makes a difference to a guy like that. As weird as it sounds, it's like Fisk actually cares about Lopez. Or something nearly human like that. He definitely cares what she thinks. Huh? Peter said. Maybe he's grooming her for something. And when you said she must have followed you, that meant she had to pick you up from somewhere. So she either knows where you live, or she spotted you at Fisk Tower and started to follow you from there. Peter leaned back. So, Fisk has 2 spider impersonators working for him. One is assigned the job of making me look bad, and the other one has instructions to turn me into a human pincushion. The 2 seemed kind of at odds. MJ nodded. Something's definitely not right. The way she came after me was strange, he said. Thinking back, as angry as she was, it felt, I don't know, personal. It was like the hatred was coming off her in waves, even though she never said a word, hardly even grunted. So, maybe she's doing this on her own? MJ offered. Which could mean Fisk doesn't know she's trying to kill you. It could be something going on inside Fisk Tower that Kingpin himself might not even know about. I guess for now, I'll see what I can find out about her. Also, did you get a clearer picture of the spear? I think so. Why? Just a hunch, she said. But if it's an antique, maybe it's distinctive. It might tell us something. It might be another lead pointing back to Fisk. Peter sighed. MJ, I know you're not going to want to hear this, but maybe that's not such a great idea. You're talking about monkeying around with Fisk's inner circle, his personal life. People have been beaten to death just for thinking about insulting his wife. If this woman actually means something to him, then he's not going to play nice. Maybe I should pass the story on to someone else then, she said testily. That's not what I'm saying. She folded her arms. It's not? Okay, it was precisely what he was saying now that he thought about it. I've seen this before with reporters. People I actually cared about. They think their pursuit of the truth will somehow protect them, and they end up in car accidents, or home invasions, or the sudden need, without any history, to take their own lives. You're not immune to any of that, just because Fisk pretends to be charmed by you. I know all of this, she said. I also know how to cover my tracks. The graveyard is full of reporters who knew how to cover their tracks. And our society depends on reporters who know never to back down, she snapped. Are you saying I should give up and go home? Of course not, but... He let himself trail off, because he had no idea how he was going to finish the sentence. What he wanted was for her to give up and go home. He didn't want her to give up on reporting, of course. He didn't even want her to give up on reporting about bad people doing bad things. She wanted to investigate, and he respected that. He loved that about her. But Fisk was something different. He was his own level of dangerous. Peter knew she had no illusions about what kind of person she was challenging, but that wouldn't stop her. MJ's tenacity was admirable, and attractive, and heroic. It was part of what made her special, but he had a hard time living with it. You know my history too well for me to go over it with you, he began. Sorry, she snapped. You don't get to use your uncle as a free pass to tell me what to do. I get it. You want to protect everyone. It's what drives you to do what you do. And that is a big part of what makes you special. But you have to know where to draw the line. We're talking about one thing, he said. Wilson Fisk. I just want to draw a red line around him. Is that so much to ask? What if I start looking into some other crime boss? She countered. What if it were about these Blackridge guys? Would that be a red line? MJ, he groaned. It was the best he had. You go out and face danger every single day, she said. And I've had to learn to live with it. But you have abilities. I know you do. But you're fighting people who have abilities, and some of them are more powerful than you. Does that stop you? You think I haven't stayed up nights, worrying you were going to be trampled, or electrocuted, or stung, or flung, or deatomized? I don't remember any deatomizing. She took her hands, cutting them off. Peter, I love you. but I don't love having this argument all the time. It's draining me. You're going to have to learn to live with me making my own choices. This is what I've been wanting to talk to you about. I put it off because I know you don't need any more drama, but this is a big deal to me. I can't live the life I want to live if I feel like I've got you hovering over me, asking me to explain every choice I make. You're going to have to trust me that I'm responsible enough to weigh risks, just as I've trusted you to do that. He nodded. Okay. So, we're never going to have this fight again, right? That, he agreed, is the goal, and you'll stay out of my business. Except when you ask, he said. Or if you really need me to interfere. A week later, they sat in a restaurant on the Upper East Side. It was their last night with Harry, who was leaving for Europe the next afternoon. Peter had been looking forward to it for days, and he'd been praying that there would be no crisis that would make him late or turn him into a no-show. Inexplicably, the universe actually did him a solid, and the three of them were enjoying a night of good food, good wine, and good memories. Ideally, Peter would have treated his friend, but economic realities being what they were, Harry insisted on picking up the tab. Don't fight me on this, Harry said to him before they sat down. You could be a millionaire 100 times over if you weren't so committed to doing the right thing. I get to pretend I'm a good guy by spending some money I'll never miss. Things were still a little tense with MJ. He promised to try to do better, to stop being such a worrier. But it wasn't like she was pursuing a new hobby. She was asking for support as she went down a road that could get her killed. Every time he thought he needed to be more supportive, he remembered what that meant. To look the other way while she crossed Wilson Fisk. How was he supposed to pull that off? He wanted to put it all aside for the night, but it wasn't easy. MJ was having a hard time too. On top of that, Peter couldn't shake the feeling that there was something Harry wasn't telling him. The purpose of the trip was still vague. Wanting to find himself? Figure out his priorities? Discover his passion? It seemed as if he could do that in New York. Or with a bunch of quick trips to Europe. He didn't see why Harry needed to relocate there. Of course, given that his father was Norman Osborn, he might need an ocean between the two of them to feel like he had breathing room. That would have sufficed as an explanation, he supposed, if there hadn't been other hints. Peter had known Harry long enough to tell when his friend was holding something back. He had that feeling now. There were other ways in which Harry didn't quite seem himself. A little more easily distracted, or a little quicker to let his temper flare. Once, Peter thought he saw Harry's hand trembling. It worried him. But he knew when to give Harry space. He just wished he didn't have to give him that much space. I'm exhausted, Harry told him as they headed out of the restaurant. I need to get some sleep before spending an entire day sitting and doing nothing on an airplane. You two should carry on, though. I wish I could, MJ said. I've got a deadline. After this, I'm brewing a pot of coffee and pulling an all-nighter. They saw her into a cab, and then Peter began to walk Harry to his apartment. Try and keep my dad in line while I'm gone, Harry said. He'll make some time to meet with you, so take advantage of that if he starts to do something stupid. He seems like he's doing an okay job as mayor, Peter said. Maybe a little too corporate-friendly, but things seem to be working pretty well. We thought about that, Harry said. I try to get him to see things differently, but he's always been a business guy. And once he gets an idea, He won't let it go. You can be like that too. Harry laughed. Exactly. And do you have any idea how hard it is to fight yourself? The fight on the roof with the woman, Maya Lopez, came back to him. He had a pretty good idea. So, any tips, he asked? What, on fighting yourself? Harry looked at him like he was crazy, which, under the circumstances, wasn't all that unreasonable. Be someone else, he said. That's one thing they'll never see coming. They reached his apartment building and started to shake hands, then turned it into a hug. Harry didn't know his secret, but after MJ and Aunt May, he was the only person who really knew him, who got him. Even though he couldn't tell Harry about everything that was going on with him, having him around helped. Now Peter was going to be one step closer to being alone. Harry seemed to sense his disquiet. Things seemed kind of strained with you and MJ. I worry about her, Peter said. And she doesn't like that I worry. If you hover over her, Harry asked, you'll lose her. If she gets herself killed, I'll lose her worse. You can't control how she lives her life, Harry said. But you can control how much you bug the crap out of her. It was good advice. After Harry went upstairs, Peter stood on the street looking up, feeling like one more piece of his life was disappearing.